Good morning, students. Welcome back to another class of English literature. In today's video, we will begin with a new chapter of prose, Chief Seattle Speech. Now, before we plunge into the details of the lesson, let us know who was Seattle. Chief Seattle was a Squamish chief, a leading figure among his people who pursued a path of accommodation to the white settlers. The city of Seattle in the US state of Washington was named after him. A widely publicized speech arguing in favor of ecological responsibility and respect of Native Americans' land rights had been attributed to him. However, what he actually said has been lost through translation and rewriting. We move on to the plot of the story. The story plot is Chief Seattle delivers a speech at Washington in 1854, where he thanks the white chief for the acknowledgement of his greetings of friendship and goodwill. Seattle speaks in favor of ecological responsibility and respect of Native Americans' land rights. He offers greetings of friendship to the white people. Seattle wants his tribal people to be protected by the white people, as the white Americans are more powerful than the Native Americans. At last, Seattle appeals to the white people to be just and kind to his tribal men. Moving on to the theme of the story. Chief Seattle's speech is a brilliant document of folk wisdom advocating coexistence of races and mutual respect for each other's way of living. It has gained immense popularity through the ages, and here we are going to emphasize on the following themes. The first theme, Red Indians' attachment to their land. Throughout the story, you will see that the Native Americans are very emotional regarding their land. So that is one of the most important theme of the story, where Seattle's people, their relation with the land is sacred. The speech is an emotionally charged response to the governor Stephen's proposal asking the Red Indians to sell their land to the imperial masters. Here the imperial or the royal masters are referred to the white Americans. But for the Red Indians, the land is just not a piece of earth, but a symbol of their culture and memories. It is the resting place of their ancestors, and therefore the Red Indians consider the land to be sacred place for them. The next theme, oppression. The speech delineates the physical and mental oppression meted out to the Native Americans when the white Americans came and started colonizing them. The white Americans unjustly exercised authorities over them, and this can be deduced from the speech. It is the native land of the Red or the Native Americans which the big chief in Washington wishes to buy. But the word wish is used sarcastically by Seattle. The whites are so powerful in terms of army and navy that the Red Indians need or rather are forced to bow down. Seattle says that the whites are willing to allow them enough land to live comfortably, which is symbolic of their master-slave relationship. The next theme is clash of civilization or racial discrimination. Throughout the story or throughout the speech, the whites' belief and way of living seems to clash with that of the Native American tribe. Their difference in skin color is emphasized again and again. The European imperial masters are referred to as white chief, big chief, pale-faced children, whereas the natives are referred to as red man or red children. The differences in their cultural and religious identities is the primary source of conflict between them. The next theme, environmental concerns. This speech has been described as one of the most beautiful and prophetic statement ever made on the environment. It refers to the Red Indians' respect and love for their land, environment and nature around them. Now, throughout the story, we'll come across the words big chief, white chief, good father. So we know at the very onset we need to clarify who is the big chief, white chief and good father. So Chief Seattle meant the governor of Washington Territory, Isaac Stevens, when he says white chief. And when he says great chief, he refers to the President of America. Big chief and great chief refers to the same person, that is the President of America. Though the president at the time of the speech was Franklin Pierce, Seattle actually referred to the first president, George Washington, as the Native Americans believed or thought that he was still alive. The good father also refers to George Washington. Seattle mentions that since King George has moved his boundaries further north, he has become the father of the Native Americans. The literary devices used in the story. Simile. It is a figure of speech in which a likeness between two different things is stated in an explicit way using the words as or like. For example, my words are like the stars that never change. Another example, they are like the grass that covers vast prairies. The next literary device used is metaphor. It is a figure of speech in which a comparison between two different things is implied but not clearly stated. For example, Chief Seattle, while speaking of his people who are very few, says, they resemble the scattering trees of a storm-swept plain. The next figure of speech, alliteration. It is the close repetition of consonant sounds, usually at the beginning of words, as in our great good father. See, G and G is repeated. Or scattering trees of a storm-swept plain. Again, S is repeated. Rhetorical questions. It is a question that is asked without expecting an answer. The question might be one that does not have an answer or one that has an obvious answer but is asked to make a point or persuade or for literary effect. For example, how then can we be brothers? Another example, how can your God become our God and renew our prosperity and awaken in us dreams of returning greatness? Now, a short description of the story. It is a speech delivered by Chief Seattle, as I told you in the very beginning, in 1854 at Washington. It contains arguments in favor of ecological responsibility and respect of Native Americans' land rights. Seattle hopes that their good father, that is, the President of America, in Washington would protect them, and his brave warriors would prove to be great wall of strength. Now, Seattle belonged to the Squamish tribe, and he delivered this speech at Washington in 1854. In this speech, he pursued the path of accommodation to white settlers in the US. His speech contained arguments in favor of ecological responsibility and respect of Native Americans' land rights. He recollects the hostilities that existed between the white and his tribal people, that is the Red American. He thinks that his old tribal people will never like to resume the old hostilities. He hopes that their good father in Washington would protect them. Now Seattle realizes that the white man and red children are two distinct races, and there is little common between them. Here in this speech, he makes a reference to the proposition which he had received from the white man. He hopes that his people will react favorably to the proposition and accept it. But he puts a condition before taking a decision. He puts a condition that his people should be given freedom to visit the tombs of their ancestors, friends, and children at any time. He opines that the deserted streets at night will be thronged with the returning hosts that once filled them and still love this beautiful land. The title Chief Seattle Speech is very appropriate because the speech delivered by Seattle at Washington in 1854 deals with the speaker's views about the white people. He thanks the white chief for acknowledging the greetings of friendship and goodwill. He speaks in favor of ecological responsibility and respect of Native Americans' land rights. He wants the white people to be just and kind to his tribal people, and therefore appeals to the good father in Washington to protect his tribal people from their ancient enemies. Now, what message do we receive from the speech? Through his speech, Seattle, the Squamish tribe leader, wants to convey that hostilities between white Americans and his tribal people should end because it is leading only to deaths. Thus, in his speech, he strikes a note of reconciliation between Native Americans and the white Americans. He wants to pursue the path of accommodation to the white settlers. He also puts forward his arguments in favor of ecological responsibility and respect of Native Americans' land rights. He hopes that the good father would protect his people, that is the Native Americans, and will prove to be a great wall of strength against the ancient enemies. Although he is conscious of the fact that the white Americans and the Native Americans are two distinct races with separate origins and destinies, but still has a hope that they will be protected by the white American. Therefore, he concludes on a hopeful note that his people will be free to visit the tombs of their ancestors, friends, and children at any time. Please go through the chapter once, and in the next video, I will explain you the lesson in details. Thank you. Have a wonderful day ahead, children.